All right, this is Richard Morchoe, the Long Hill Report.
I'm Gus. How are you
March, and Gus Steeves is with us, and we're going to take a half hour to sort things out in the great world. I brought something along before we start, really. I brought something along that I got in the mail. It's election season, and I don't know why they send this to me because I'm not a Republican.
Actually, we were getting them too.
Yeah, but this one had some small thing. They want you to be in the Republican state committee, or vote for people in Republican, who are more Republican than the other people running. And anyway, this always drives me crazy. The Republican committee advocates or candidates want to be on that because they want to be part of a party that's in the state lowering inflation and decreasing the cost of living in MA. It always bugs me because it says they don't know what causes inflation. Mm-hmm. And it is not what the government can do. I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act of Biden did increase inflation because it increased spending, and the government had to cover that, the Fed had to cover that and everything. But in Massachusetts, you cannot print money. Nope. You can't make inflation. You can make things worse, or you can make things better by how you spend. But why don't these people know about this? But they aren't the only ones. It's just about everybody in the country who doesn't watch this show. So, we are here, and I'm going to let Gus start off. He had a topic to bring up. I have topics to bring up. Go get him, Gus.
Well, I mean, that kind of ties directly into this, because I know we were getting the same kinds of mailers. I think we got 3 of them from the same 2 people. And I don't know why I know why we got it, because we both took Republican ballots because we had a state rep race. The Republican primary was last month, and that was the only race. It was between the 2 Republicans. So anybody who wanted to vote it took a Republican ballot, and so I'm sure that's how we got on their mailing list. But now I wanted to dovetail with that, going into election cycle, with the fact that, as everybody knows, we had a primary on Tuesday, which for the average person, quite frankly, didn't matter, because everybody knew who was going to win for the Democrats and Republicans, and they did. Not a surprise at all. However, in Massachusetts, there was also a third party running. And I think maybe in statewide, maybe 600 people took ballots for the Libertarians.
Yes.
And it was interesting because I purposely did take one because I didn't care about the other 2. And it was partially because of the fact that I had seen 2 of their candidates at the Free and Equal debate a couple of weeks earlier, which was a debate specifically sponsored for third-party candidates. It had, I'm drawing a blank on last names, Lars Mapstead, Chase Oliver, who are both the Libertarians. It had Jill Stein and Jasmine Sherman, who are the Greens, and it had Carla De La Cruz, thank you, who was a socialist candidate. And
there was another Libertarian. It's kind of a German name.
Yeah, but those are the 5 that were on that particular.
No, I saw because I voted for the guy who I don't remember his name.
Rechtenstedt or something like that.
Hornberger or something.
Or Hornberger, yeah. There were 5 Libertarian candidates on the ballot. Yeah. Or maybe even 6.
And I wrote in
those are the ones that were
in your name for state committee member.
Oh, okay.
No, I did.
I don't care. So anyway, and that was kind of that was a jumping off point for even hearing about any of the other than Jill, because I know Jill personally, and we're in the process of just starting up the campaign to get her on the Massachusetts ballot for November. But as far as the other ones, I've met Jasmine. But it was the first time I had heard of Chase or Lars or Carla. And some of what they said was interesting. Some of them, what they said was seemed kind of rote. And a couple of them kept falling back to the same ideas over and over again. So I was actually kind of impressed with Chase from the Libertarian side. And honestly, that's why I took a Libertarian ballot, just because I wanted to do something that was not one of the two major corporate parties.
Well, wasn't there a movement to take the Democratic ballot and not vote or vote for?
Yeah, in some states.
Not in
here, I think there was one here. It wasn't as well promoted, I think, as it was like in Minnesota or Michigan. In our state, was it no preference?
I don't think. Well, I looked at the ballots before I took one, and I took the Libertarian ballot just because, well, I'm in here now. I didn't see anything on the Republican or Democratic ballot that I really that caught my interest.
Yeah.
Usually, you know, my general opinion on voting is I saw this years and years ago, an article, and I wish I had saved it. Voting is like cheering.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all it, and that's why I proposed a reform to the electoral system.
Right.
But it really, in this one-party North Korea, it doesn't really mean too much. And in some deep red states, it probably. But where does it mean? You know, like there's how many voters potential voters in the country? 100 million, 200 million, whatever it is.
That, yeah.
And my fraction of that is 1/200 millionth or something. That's going to really move the needle.
No, I agree.
Now then people will say to you, what if everybody had that opinion and stopped voting? Well, then I'd vote. Of course. That would make sense then to really get excited.
Well, I think the issue really is more important is that is getting people involved at the local level where votes actually matter. At the federal level, I'm inclined to agree with you. The way the system is so broken that when one vote for 200 million ballots get cast, that one vote doesn't really make much of a difference.
Couple of aspects of that. You're right. Getting people. If everybody came to their town meeting, like I'm going to go to the town meeting,
or even at the ballot for the local elections.
If everybody came to the town meeting, everybody came to and everybody voted and everything, that'd be nice. I'm not the guy to bludgeon them to do that. If you don't want to do it, that basically says you're voting anyway as sort of satisfied enough that you'd rather have dessert than come down and participate in the town meeting. You'd rather go fishing than vote.
In fact, I think that's probably true with a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm not going to bludgeon you if you don't want to.
I'm not.
But if you ask me a question, do I think so and so is the better guy to vote for? I'll answer. If I can, will I steer myself to go to the town meeting? Well, I may, because we're having something. We're voting on an override. Mm-hmm. My natural inclination is to vote against an override, but I want to hear. Mm-hmm. So if I get a chance, if I'm not, if I can be relatively assured I'll get to my normal bedtime, I might go. Mm-hmm. That's me on that.
Well, I was thinking in the sense of both at town meetings and just at the town elections, the ballots, where they're at that level. It matters, I think, because you can actually have elections that are decided by a handful of votes. Whereas at the federal level, or certainly most likely at the state level, it doesn't make that much of a difference.
That is true.
That's why I say the actual vote matters at that level. And it would be nice to see everybody participate. We all know they don't.
No.
Unfortunately. And I think that's part of that is the flaw of the way we teach civics and politics and participation in general.
Well, I remember reading, it's a book about New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, and how they were settled. Mm-hmm. They were the founding things. I forget the name of the book, but it basically, Albion Sea.
Okay.
And
I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
And the argument was about New England town meeting. People only came when there was something important. Otherwise, it was just ignored. People like to say about self-government in New England. It worked and it didn't work. The usual crowd did run things, but if they screwed up, everybody would come and vote them out.
In some cases, that's true.
And I think it's true all along, basically.
Largely, I think there was more participation back in the colonial days.
This is not what Albion, the book, what's his name, the author, he posited it.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, but generally speaking, if people were, people express satisfaction by not coming.
Sometimes.
And yeah, it's like I was talking with Mike about the Market Watch show on on NPR, and how the economists were, this was what they loved, and I'm thinking as I'm listening to it, don't you get it? You supposedly these heavy-duty economists, and inflation is screwing the little people.
Yeah.
And they didn't get why. This is an aspect of why Trump is dealing with a certain.
Absolutely.
And not that I think he's going to change anything. He's going to have a great effect because he was a big spender too. But what they don't get is, and you hear these things about how the rural voter is is a threat to democracy. There was something on TV. There's a book out about that. What they don't get is that vote for the little guy who voted for Trump. It's his alternative to taking the pitchfork and stabbing the NPR types, which almost makes you wish he wouldn't vote. He couldn't vote, and he would take up the pitchforks because they're stuffed shirts.
There's a point to be said for that, and that's I think what we see with our current electoral cycle is that Trump has for years been kind of that bellwether, but I think it's getting to the point where there's a significant part of the populace who is totally disgusted with both Trump and Biden.
How significant?
That's what we need to see, unfortunately. But I think there's a lot of people out there.
I can wait till election day, but I maybe Bobby Kennedy Jr. or whatever maybe he's the bellwether that will or maybe somebody comes out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's going to happen. And like I was saying, that I heard something yesterday, or maybe it was today, that Trump is surging among African Americans, Hispanics. You got 10% of people who voted for Biden who have turned on Biden.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And so,
but I think a lot of the people that are turning on Biden aren't necessarily going to Trump. I think there's a fair number of people that are turning on Trump that aren't necessarily going to Biden. The problem is both the groups that are sick of both of those candidates at the moment don't have anywhere to call home, for the most part. I mean, you've got people like RFK Jr., you've got people like the Greens, you've got people like the Libertarians, you've got a bunch of smaller third parties that the way the current political system is set up is almost guaranteed to not give them any coverage at all.
Okay, the thing I was quoting about the 10% who left, they left Biden for Trump. Mm-hmm. They didn't say, okay,
I'm sure some did.
Some did. 10%, this is the number.
No, I believe that. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
They didn't say, I'm in the wilderness now, I'm kind of undecided. I'm waiting for the big guy.
No, I get that. But there's also significant who have bailed out of Trump, who have bailed out of Biden, who are not going to Trump because they can't stand him either. The publicity doesn't cover those people.
I would think you're right, but at least somewhat. But I'll say this about Trump. I don't know if whatever his message is, he's been relatively consistent.
True. Yes.
And I don't believe he'll solve the border, but he's been very consistent about the border. So he's a guy who says what you think he means. Maybe not what he means, but he says that. And so I think right now, if the election were held today, I think he would win hands down.
I think he would too. I think he would too.
And maybe something comes along. I would hope something comes along. I saw an article in antiwar.com today.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically come out for Israel and the Israel-Hamas war. Well, I'm the guy.
Trump has, you mean, or?
Trump.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't surprise me. But, he's been less insane on Ukraine than anybody else who's major candidate.
Well, those two.
Well, no, Nikki was, we've got to stop Ukraine. Putin.
Well, so is Biden, and so have half of the Republican candidates, and I mean, the ones that are opposing those wars are the Greens and Libertarians, but they don't get any publicity.
No, it's quite true. Yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, and I was seeing something just a couple of days ago, was talking about, somebody had the gall to say, actually, that the media has the responsibility to really vet the candidates effectively because of this political cycle, and they do, but they don't actually talk to half of the candidates. They don't give the alternative any publicity at all,
well, the media,
and they won't actually go after the Bidens or the Trumps of the world for multiple cycles to go after what they're really doing. They go after the propaganda, and that's pretty much it.
I don't think the media has a duty or a right to bet anything. But they should at least give them the chance to speak.
They should, I agree with that.
I mean,
I was quoting somebody, as I say, I was quoting somebody I was reading. That was what he was saying.
Yeah, and he was a media, and I remember it vaguely myself. And that's the other thing about the media saying the rural voters are a threat to democracy.
Right.
Basically, it was a white guy saying it, but it's basically an anti-white little rant that the white rural voter is just an absolute racist.
I don't think it's so much an anti-white rant as much as it is.
You watch it, find it, and watch it.
No, I understand. I understand what your point is. But I think it's more, it follows for years and years and years, and this goes back well before America was even founded. Historically, the urban upper class has always hated the rural class.
They've always
been afraid of it.
They've also been not been particularly happy about the urban underclass.
That's true too. That's true too.
Well, I want to move on.
And they've historically used the urban underclass to fight off the rural underclass on many occasions.
To an extent.
Yeah.
I want to go something in Massachusetts that happened. About a week or two ago, I heard a guy being interviewed, I think on WTAG.
Okay, I don't listen to that.
Or not TAG, CRN or whatever,
Okay.
CRN. And Selectman from Holden, I think.
Okay.
And he's talking about the MBTA housing bill, and how Holden's going to fight it. And
Okay. The MBTA housing bill?
I'll get into that a little more
Okay.
now. In Milton, it's also come in that the housing bill is, if you get the MBTA or the MBTA has something to do with you, you have to bond yourself and build affordable housing.
Okay. Okay, I think I saw something about that, although not those particular stories.
They read something that I believe was either sent by the governor.
The governess.
And it basically says, you've got to do this. It's the law. We're basically going to make you build affordable housing, which means basically for people who are not from Milton, and not necessarily from Holden. Now this,
The problem is affordable housing is a development scam.
oh,
It has been for a long
of
time.
course it is. Of course it is. But this
Because
is,
it's a way they get state money to build projects that and renovate old historical
but
buildings.
this
Often,
is where, yeah, we
where
know
they
that.
jack it up for $1,500 a month, and it's not actually for the people who live there.
We know this. But
It's
the
bringing
way,
people in from
but the
Metro
way
West mostly.
Maura and her administration said, it's the law, you must comply. This is, there are lots of laws that, that law, I don't think, is going to apply as much to Wellesley,
I probably won't.
or
Pretty much
Dover,
guarantee that, yeah.
or Dover, and stuff like that. So it's basically, and it'll be basically projects, and it will be slum housing. It will be slum housing. You can disagree.
We'll see. Because I think part
we
of the
won't see it in 3 weeks. We'll see it 10 years.
Maybe. I think part of the problem is that the way they've done affordable housing for so long in this country, or in this state, I should say, is that it's really a tax scam.
Of course it is.
Where it's designed so that they get a bunch of historical tax credits of one form or another to renovate buildings that really do need to be renovated. I can think of a couple of projects in my own town where that's how they're running them. And they get these state grants to do these various things, and they often try to seek some sort of tax breaks from the local community. Sometimes they get them, sometimes they don't. And they promote it as such that the rents are still ridiculously higher than the rents that the actual community has. So they end up making all of their money, whether they're on the relatively few that are technically being subsidized in their facilities, or they're the 80% that are not. And the ones that are getting subsidized, they're set up in such a way where it's basically 70-30. The 70% comes from the state, and the 30% comes from the tenant, if they have that much, and the rest of it's all coming from the tenants, so that the landlord makes out like a bandit either way. So they don't really care who lives there.
Of course not. But like Milton, 30, 40 years ago, they wouldn't be talking about doing it to Milton. And actually Holden for the Worcester area is an upscale place.
Relatively.
But Milton isn't the town of Milton that I never lived there, but it was a boy. It was kind of really upscale. Mm-hmm. It was certainly more upscale than where I grew up. But now, Milton is far more integrated, and it's still kind of upscale, but I think they're willing to try it with Milton. And
Possibly.
I think it kind of stinks. And whatever you say, whenever the state decides where to house people, it is eventually going to be a disaster. And
It doesn't have to be. I think a lot
it
of
will
it depends.
eventually.
It depends on how much authority the local community has over governing it.
I will.
Because it doesn't have to be.
Having been
if it's done right.
Cab driver in Boston, I will state this as a law, and I know you have the faith there, but it will be either it is built because there is an economic need where somebody sees they can make a profit without scamming, or it's a scam.
There's some truth to that. And unfortunately, and often, and I think that it often is a scam. Unfortunately, as I said, it doesn't have to be if it's done right. The problem is vetting the people who are doing it right and making sure the community has oversight of how it's done.
Where has it ever been done right?
Honestly, I don't know. I won't deny that. But I do believe, I have faith in the communities if they're allowed to do their jobs as a community. And the people getting involved.
I have faith in, I heard the guy from Holden, I have faith in the community of Holden, because they'd say no. N-O, that's it. That's the faith I have.
That is one way to prevent the problem. However, in some cases, there is a need for it that is unfortunately being manipulated by the developers to create these de facto scams. Whereas if local people knew what was going, if local people had more say in what was happening with our housing system, and more people could own, and I think a lot of the issue is that so much of the housing is owned by so few people.
Let me ask you a question. This is arising at a certain time, and I don't know if somebody knew something beyond beforehand. When coming into Massachusetts, and there are a surge of people,
Yeah, that's true.
and nobody can say, look, don't send them to Massachusetts. Mara Healy couldn't say that to save her life, because she's already written a letter to the Holy See saying, aren't you going to canonize me? If we're not, we have to say, this is something wrong. Opening a border to everybody who wants to come across. It will come as a scam. And this is where Mara needs places to put people.
At the moment, that's basically true.
And
There's a whole bunch of people that are currently in hotels. And stuff
at
like
what
that.
moment won't it be true?
I'm just saying that it is now. I'm
And
agreeing with you
I'm
at this
asking
point.
you, at what moment won't
I
it be
can't
true?
predict what will happen tomorrow or 5 years from now.
Yeah, but I can. If certain aspects continue. If the flood of people is not stopped at the border, then you will have it in Massachusetts. Abbott called everybody's bluff. You will have it in Massachusetts. You will have it, you already have it in New York City. And it doesn't work. Now, the mayor of New York is trying to act tough and say, pretend, we got to stop this. Will he have the nerve? Will he have the power? I don't know. But Mara can't say anything, because Mara is up for canonization. Your turn.
As you know, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. So I don't support either of them the way their policies have been done for a long time. I mean, I think that the states and the regions of small collections of states need to be have a lot more authority to say what we want as far as policy goes, whether it be immigration policy or foreign policy or so forth. That I think part of the problem is, where is this coming from? It's certainly being implemented by the Biden administration, but I think a lot of it is coming from corporate interests, where they're trying to get. I think there are a lot of them. They're trying to seek employees that they can undermine the ability of the
For what
growing union
jobs? We
movements.
don't have manufacturing jobs left.
No, but we're getting a lot of these gig work type jobs.
Yeah,
that's where we see
we have
a lot
enough
of
people doing them already.
That's true. But there's also I think there's also a lot of things going on where I think there's some of the people that are running these systems are trying to find people who they can slide into, get rid of the higher paying.
Tell me the job. Tell me the job.
At this point, I don't know.
I mean,
the
I've been
system
down
is
to New
such
York.
a mess.
I go down to New York, and I haven't had a Native American.
Our economy is such
I
a
don't
mess.
have an American that has been born here as a Lyft driver or an Uber driver. I haven't since I.
And that's a perfect example.
But they weren't. They came a long time ago.
Some of them did.
So what's the point? You're not going to, everybody knows Uber and Lyft aren't changing their I'm going to change, and we have to stop, because I guess I'm looking, and somebody came here. But Uber and Lyft, I'm not going to change their structure, pay structure now. There's no need to bring somebody else in.
Well, I think the issue is that the people are starting to realize that are doing those gig jobs that they can't make ends meet. So they would rather bring in people who, at the moment, may not see that yet.
I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it. The surge is to...
Then what's the point of doing it?
I'm not buying that as the point.
Then what is the point?
I would like to know, but
I don't either.
Mayorkas has been doing this since day one, and there's something, some people have said they're bringing in voters. I don't know.
I don't believe that personally.
Maybe not.
Because actually there was a bill that was passed in New York that would have supposedly allowed
and they've taken
people,
that off.
And it was ruled unconstitutional by the
Yes,
Supreme
I
Court,
know.
which it is.
Yeah, but federally...
I have no problem with doing that because it is unconstitutional. They're not citizens.
Federally, it has been posited that the Democrat Party wants these as...
It has been supposed but it's
so
unconstitutional.
Your job, I'm granting you a job, is to come up with the exact reason.
The problem is I think there are so many, when any of these things go on, I think there were so many conflicting reasons.
Well, we get it. We have to say goodbye right now. So that's your next month's assignment. And you can do it. We have confidence in you. Anybody who does not have confidence in Gus, yell and scream. That's it. All right. This is Gus Steeves and Richard Morchoe, the Colonial Report. Thank you very much. We'll be back next month.
Have a good night.
Laser like Gus will have the answer for everything. Thank you.